Welcome. With me today is Rick Hyde. He's CEO and founder of Insured Connect, and their product is called NIC. It helps life insurance agents manage their in-force policies. Rick, welcome.
Thank you.
So tell me a little bit about the problem you were seeing and the problem you're trying to solve in the life insurance space and how NIC helps. So what was the initial problem you saw you were trying to solve?
Yeah, so if you think about, independent life agents, BGAs, IMOs, they typically will do business with anywhere from 10 to 25 different life insurance carriers. And the challenge is that, the in-force policy data, which they would want to service their in-force book or to, upsell and cross-sell and so on, it's all hidden away in carrier back office, policy administration systems, or possibly even with, third-party TPAs. And it's very difficult for them to access that information. They'd have to log into multiple carrier websites and download all kinds of data. It's been a nightmare for them. So we've been focused on providing those individuals with a single view of their in-force book.
So previous to your tool, if an agent wanted to get a holistic view of their book of business, they'd have to go out to multiple websites, multiple logins, multiple downloads, put all that data out there, and then even then they'd have no great way of consolidating all of that data.
Yeah, absolutely, Jeff. And it's even worse than that because every carrier website's different. The way you search for data is different. The format of the data is different. What you can download is different. Sometimes these sites will be maybe agent centric. Other times they're policy centric. Sometimes they're product centric. So it's been a real disaster for agents and BGAs. And if you think about it and you think back, the whole industry has been so sales focused forever, right? Mm-hmm. And in fact, carriers and agents didn't even want to hear from policy owners because once a policy was sold, if you hear from them, you're going to add cost. So really, it was just sell a policy, and then almost make it difficult for the individual to get a hold of anybody because as long as they're paying their premium, everything's great. Carriers had built in a certain lapse ratio, assuming some people were going to drop off, and so on and so forth. And that was all built into their underwriting. And it's only been in kind of the last few years when the industry woke up and they said, "Hey, wait a minute, we've got to service these individuals." And that's really due to the internet and companies like Amazon providing super high levels of service and easy access to information and data and so on. And all of a sudden, the whole industry woke up and said, "Hey, we've got to start doing this." But all the technology was designed, for sales. And if you look at all the insurtechs over the last few years, and like almost all of them have been around, hey, automating the underwriting process, instant issue of new products, efficiency around sales and so on. And nobody ever really has been too concerned about the enforced, policy service side of things. Now, some carriers, Jeff, have realized this, several years ago, and they said, hey, enforced policy service is going to become important. And they started spending a lot of money. They built some really cool platforms. But then they had a different challenge, and that was, hey, these agents are doing business with 25 carriers. How are they going to remember my website? How are they going to remember my login? Yeah. And so they've had pretty big adoption challenges as well.
Yeah. So even if they built the greatest the portal for agents to get their data, it still didn't solve the agent's problem per se until a tool like NIC steps in. So tell us a little bit about NIC and how you solve that, how you're able to solve that problem of consolidation.
Well, yeah. So first of all, we took kind of a different approach than you may have seen with some others that have kind of attempted in the space. We partnered directly with distribution. Okay, mm-hmm. Large distributors, and we leveraged their influence, their stick with the carriers to get the carriers to start feeding us in-force data. So they introduced us to the carriers. We developed partnerships with the carriers. There is a big value proposition for carriers by doing this, but to get them even to engage with us took the the big distributors to say, you've got to talk to these folks. And then, we partnered directly with the carriers because they're concerned about data security, data access, all of the issues around their book. And we were very transparent with them, very open with them, showed them what we're doing, how people are accessing the data, went through all their security audits, and continue to go through all their security audits. And created a single database, a single platform that takes data feeds from all of the different carriers. So a carrier signs up, they push their in-force book. We pull that data in. We have some really unique, mapping tools that we can map their data on all these different formats, bring it together into a standard format, load it, and make it available into the marketplace. So a little bit of a different approach in that we partnered with
Yeah.
distribution, but we
Yeah.
also partnered with the carriers.
Yeah. So I got a couple follow-up questions. So one is like, how much of this was a technology problem and how much of this was like a political problem where you had to get all the right people in the room to band together?
Yeah. So first part, definitely a political problem.
Yeah.
And we had many carriers day one say, not a chance. We're not providing you with that data. We had to get amass a certain amount of distribution before we had a big enough stick before they would actually provide us with the data. So there was a big political challenge. But then on top of that, as you well know, all these policy admin systems. I mean, some of these things are 40, 50 years old, maybe even older, right? And they didn't have an efficient way of getting the data out, feeding the data to us. So there's a lot of work to be done with carriers. One carrier in particular, we spent over a year working with them and you just kind of educating them and showing them what other carriers have done, how we've mapped the data and so on, getting the data out into a format that we can ingest. So there definitely has been a lot of work with the carriers. Helping them support all the different standards that are out there, Accord, DTCC, custom files, and so on and so forth, trying to make it easy for them. So it's been kind of 50-50, I would say.
50-50. And I know even on the data front, even though there are those standards that you just mentioned, not everyone adheres to the standard in the exact same way, making it challenging for you.
Yeah, not even close.
Not even close. Yeah, let's not pretend. Is it really even a standard at that point? Like,
that's right. No, they're not. They're not standards, and their data, as you know, it'll be in different systems. Like they'll have, certain fields on a policy will be in policy admin system A, and then other fields on a policy attributes will be in policy admin system B. So it's been a heavy lift. I mean, if I look back now, I wouldn't have tried to do this had I known it was going to be this difficult. To be dead honest with you, I would have gone and sold rocks or something.
That's so funny. But I'm sure there's a lot of agents that are really glad that you did. Speaking of agents, you've talked about the data and consolidating it, but what are some of the specific use cases? Or because I think a lot of people, like you said, they could get some of that data, but I think you've taken the next step and not only gotten the data, but you've helped have a couple use cases to make it easy to take action with that data. What are some use cases you see people using with the NIC tool?
Yeah, there's kind of three that come to mind, three big ones. I mean, being notified about lapsed policies or pending lapsed policies, huge, right? So we have a system where we track the status on a policy. As soon as that status changes from in force to lapsed pending or other, boom, we can send out a notification to an agent or anybody that's on the policy. Monitoring the book for changes in its entirety, cash value changes, beneficiary changes, address changes, other things, we can send notifications. So there's a lot of neat things around the servicing of the policy, just automating it from the agents rather than having to dig through their mail or, emails or go to websites and so on and so forth. So it saves them hours and hours of time. But then the sales side is equally as big. We've automated the process to identify conversion opportunities. We automate the notifications on maturing and renewals and even upsell opportunities. So there's all these tools in there that just, take all that data and kind of liberate it and make it really, really accessible and so on for agents. So they don't miss opportunities and they don't miss sales opportunities.
Yeah, I know on the investment side, there's a lot of talk around this category of advice engagement. And when I think about what you're doing, it's somewhat similar, but on the insurance side, having those specific moments or action items where they can deliver and create great service versus, like you said, it's much more challenging or difficult when you're reading through the mail or checking emails and not having it in an organized, coordinated fashion.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. So, the next step is, so what do you see as the future? What do you see as the kind of the future of all of this consolidation and NIC and carriers and how everyone's going to work together?
Well, I think, now that we've been able to create a single view of the in-force book, I mean, let's be honest though, we do have work to do to enrich the data still. Okay, so we're working with all of our carrier partners to continue to add attributes, make the data richer. So that's ongoing. But
do you have a good example of that? Like, what would be like a good example of data enrichment, if you could think of one?
We're right now we're building a really cool tool. It's a premium tracker. So we've already got data around last premium payment date and last premium payment amount. That's beneficial information. But hey, don't we want to know about the next premium payment date and the next premium payment amount so that we could automatically send a notification to an agent and say, hey, you've got a premium payment coming up in 30 days. So they can proactively contact the client, set up the review, make sure the premium gets paid, and so on and so forth. But those two attributes aren't in the current feeds. So now the carriers are starting to work to send us that data as well.
That's awesome. So, and that's a direct result of your effort and your work. Like that just wasn't going to happen.
No.
Prior to your engagement. That's awesome. I love that story. Right. Let's not be reactive, right? Let's be a little bit proactive.
Yeah.
Cool.
But the big win, Jeff, is these carriers, a lot of them have continue to spend, and are planning to spend big dollars on policy service. Right.
Yeah.
They know that it's become important, and they finally starting to take some of that spend that was on the sales technology and put it on the service side, and they're building some really great tools. And in many cases, only their tools can provide these services. Like, it's only them that can do an address change. It's only them that can run an in-force illustration. It's only them that can provide a copy of the ledger. So there's all this additional information and services that they have, again, buried in their systems and in their websites. Again, just like the in-force data, very difficult to access, very difficult to find, very difficult to use. And so our strategy has been to now that we've got the agents in the ecosystem of users, is to create a technology gateway that essentially links our users right back into that carrier website. So I'm looking at a policy on NIC. I want to do an address change. I click a button. I go, right into that John Hancock or that AIG address change form, or that web server, whatever, however they do their address change, and deep link, single sign-on in, deep link, and I can make the address change. Or run an in-force illustration. I can open up their tool, their service. I can run the illustration, return the illustration back. So our strategy is one gateway for all of the different carrier technology. Solve this massive, think about, if you have to remember 25 different websites, usernames, passwords, which all, by the way, have to be reset every 90 days or something like that. I mean, it's chaos. It's almost impossible.
I can't imagine thinking through running an agency, and even if you were trying to train somebody to help you with this, you'd have to have all these pages of documentation, just even to navigate to the correct spot on all of the different portals for all of your policies over time. And oh, by the way, I'm sure that they're going to update and change these things over time. So as soon as you get done with your documentation, it might be out of date versus that, having here's what you do. You go to NIC, you find the client, you click change address. It'll take you where you need to go. You don't need to know anything else. Then just fill out the form in front of you. That sounds like a massive improvement for assisting and helping policyholders.
Yeah, we're excited, and the carriers are super engaged. Big challenges to implement it. I mean, this is not easy from a whole bunch of different aspects. But
how many carriers are you initially starting with? Do you initially have one you're starting with, or do you have several that you're trying to work through?
So on the life side, we have about 26 carrier feeds now on the life side, and they're roughly the same number of annuity feeds. There's, I'm going to say, 3 carriers now that have said, hey, we're really interested in kind of figuring out how to solve some of this. Some of them are starting on just single sign-on. Let's just get the single sign-on into our website.
Yeah.
We have another carrier that's looking at solving the as sold illustration versus the current in-force illustration, trying to identify why didn't the policy perform. What information can we push out to the advisor so that when they're doing that annual review, they can talk intelligently about it. And then another carrier that's kind of looking maybe at a broader solution about embedding some deep links into NIC so they can do some of these other things. And so carriers are all at different stages, different mindsets, different places where the technology can or can't be done. But there's a few big ones that are kind of leading the pack right now.
Well, I imagine too, sometimes people just need to have, it's hard to just get that very first person, but once you get the first one established and then there's a model and an example that others can emulate or look to, it'll be a lot easier to get the others on board as well.
Yeah, it was just like we started with in-force data. We got one carrier. That one finally led us to 2, and then we got to 5, then to 7. And then, a few years later, there was a tipping point, and all of a sudden now, it's pretty straightforward and easy to engage carriers. We have all the processes, steps, methodologies, every documentation in place. So it's super easy. Yeah.
Rick, anything else you'd share for anybody in the world of insurtech?
No, the only thing I might add, Jeff, is that, this has been a group effort to get to where we are. Like it's
Hmm.
taken all these different voices. It's taken the support of the BGAs, the BGA IT teams, the technology folks, everybody. Like enforced policy service is not a competitive advantage. It's table stakes. Everybody needs to be doing it, and so on. So all I would say is, encourage people, like when you're talking to carriers, you know, demand this stuff, trying to get them moving faster down these roads. Because I think if everybody's screaming about it, the squeaky wheel is going to get greased. So I would just say, help us by talking about it and so on. It's going to help you. It's going to help all the BGs, all the carriers, all the agents, and so we just appreciate everybody's support and kind of pushing
Yeah.
this forward. Yeah,
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. You're right. It does. It takes a whole team. It's more than just Nick. It's kind of everybody in the industry. If
yeah.
somebody's listening to this and they're not using Nick today, what's the best way for someone to get to start using Nick?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a super efficient onboarding and setup process for BGAs. They can be up and running in a couple months for a smaller firm, maybe 3 or 4 for a larger firm. We have to, reconcile their book for them and set up their hierarchy so they can take some time with the larger firms. But literally, they get a hold of me. I show them how the system works. Take them through the onboarding process, and then yeah, we'll get them up and running. It's become fairly painless, fairly painless.
Cool. Awesome. Rick Hyde with Nick. Thank you, Rick.
Yeah, great. Thanks. Appreciate the time, Jeff, and best of luck.
All right. Take care.